Hello, 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 friends. I'm Megan, and I have got a practice for you today that is totally hips, or I might say pelvis, because we're going to go all the way around the hips, which are part of the pelvis. And we're going to stay in the lane of somatic yoga. So, very relaxing, but also a bit spicy, because the idea of this practice is to wake up the muscles in and around your pelvis. So let's get started. And a couple of things you'll need. You'll either need one block. If you don't have a block, a slo-mo ball will work. If you don't have a slo-mo ball or a block, grab a blanket. You'll want the blanket anyhow. And we're going to start on our bellies today. So just take the blanket. We want to have our tail be nice and long. And so you're going to take the blanket and put it underneath your pelvis so that the bottom edge of the blanket lines up right with your hip creases. And then come down. You can rest your head and your arms wherever it feels most comfortable for you. Feel like your tailbone's reaching down towards the ground, so you're lengthening your low back. And then just begin to wiggle the heels in and out. And notice how moving from your heels, you can feel your leg bones, the femur bones coming into the hip sockets. And just taking this moment to land, meaning letting the tops of the thighs and the belly, the arms release themselves into the ground, but also locate yourself right in the bottom of the pelvis where the leg bones plug in just by shifting your legs. And you might also roll from the tops of the thighs or the knees. You can change how close together or far apart your legs are. Just feel like you're rolling your leg bones, those big juicy femur bones, inside your hips. And then pause for a moment. We're going to do the same thing with a little bit more movement. This is just really getting to know your relationship between your legs and your hips, the bottom of your pelvis. So you're going to bend your knees and let your legs fall side to side. And again, notice how moving from the legs, or you can move from your feet, changes the shape of the pelvis. So now you might even feel one hip lifting up off the ground. Nice, easeful breath. You can feel yourself moving on the ground with your breath. Breath in pushes the front body into the ground. Breath out. Front body seems to land on the ground. Just feeling. And if you want, if you're going this one direction and the other, you can change it and go both legs fall out. So that's actually internal rotation of your hips. So notice how your thigh bones are turning inward. And then let your ankles cross to the center of your body. And now your hips are turned outward, or external rotation of the hips. And just going back and forth through those. Maybe switching which leg is towards your body in the cross. So this is that internal and external rotation. And we're looking too, is there any pain or discomfort? Does one feel tighter or looser? Is one more available to you? Feeling that socket. And let the legs come down. Find their comfortable position. And now locate yourself in the pelvis itself. So you can think of your butt cheeks in the backside, the sides of the hip, the front of the hips where you're touching the blanket or the ground, and just shift your hips side to side. And watch how the legs respond and the torso responds. Just gently shifting your hips. Locating yourself through the pelvis with this movement, side to side. Usually that's a bit more accessible, rocking from one hip to the other. Notice if one front hip bone lifts up and the other one presses down into the ground. You can go really slow too. So that's our side to side hip rotation. But the other thing we can do is do a little bit of what we call arch and curl. So feel where that edge of that blanket is on your pelvis and think of your tailbone. And as you take a breath into the front body, lift your tailbone up towards the sky. You'll feel your belly and your ribs press into the ground, and the front of the thighs might lift. And then as you breathe out, push the tailbone down into the ground. You might feel the front of the pelvis and the front of the hip creases press into the ground. So we arch on the inhale, lift your tail a little. Exhale, push down. Just see how that feels. There's going to be a little activity. Inhaling and arching, and exhaling and curling. You can move from the hip crease that you're feeling lifting away from the ground and pushing into the ground. You could also move from the tail, as I mentioned. You could move from your sacred sacrum. Think of lifting the bottom of the sacrum, that point of the triangle, up towards the sky on inhale, pushing that point down on exhale. You could even move from your lumbar spine. Arch your lumbar spine as you breathe in, and lengthen your lumbar spine as you breathe out. And are you starting to feel on the exhalation when you're pushing the front of the pelvis down or drawing the tail down, do you feel your muscles in your buttocks come on? That's part of your pelvis. That's the backside, the part we sit on. Inhale, release them, let them stretch. Exhale, push down. Can you feel the buttocks muscles and maybe even the hamstrings in the back of the thigh? Those are the first muscles we're going to work with today. And then let it relax. We'll start with the left leg. So again, head comfortable, shoulders, arms. Feel your big toe on your left foot. And imagine reaching your big toe towards the wall behind you. Then push the thigh, the top of the left thigh into the ground. And notice when you reach the big toe and push the thigh, are you feeling activation in the back of the buttocks and the hamstrings, the thigh, the back of the thigh? Can you feel that? And then just release it. Do that one more time and hold it for a few breaths. Reach the big toe back away from you. Push the top of the thigh into the ground and familiarize yourself with these muscles and just the left side, the buttocks and the hamstrings. And so the glute max, which is the big butt muscle, is a really important hip stabilizer. And we're going to get those firing. So it starts with this, being aware that the muscles are firing. And on the other side, right side's on vacation because sometimes we have one side that does all the work and the other one is a little bit lazy when we want to work with the two sides independently. So let that go, shake it out. Now next time, you're going to engage by reaching the big toe, push the thigh into the ground, but now lift the leg up a little bit. It's going to be a little more work. And just pulsate, kind of gently, tiny little bounces. And you can keep the foot straight off the hip. You can also bring the foot more to the center of the mat. You go out to the side. So you're just changing that line of muscular energy through the buttocks and the hamstrings. And you're just pulsating it a little bit. Check to see that right side is quiet. And then slowly, slowly, slowly let it come down. Let it release. Shake it out. We're only going to do that 2 more times with the left leg. Also check strange things, that you're not tightening your shoulders or your jaw or your head. We're really isolating the muscles in the buttocks and the hamstrings. So reach the big toe back, push the top of the thigh into the ground, and then lift up again. And if you find the front of the hip crease lifting, which often happens, that's compensation, push the front of the hip crease down into the ground. And think of lifting from your inner thigh. So get that up there, get it engaged. It's going to feel different if you point your toes versus flexing your foot, pushing through the heel. You can do that little pulsation again. And play with moving the foot to the outside of the mat, to the inside of the mat. Everything else is relaxed and loosey-goosey. Just focusing on those muscles and the left back of the leg and the butt. Slowly let them come down, relax completely. Shake it out. This last one, I'm going to give you an opportunity to bring the hamstrings into a little bit shorter position when they're active. So to do that, all we need to do is bend the knee. Same thing, you can push the top of the thigh into the ground a little bit and push the front of the hip crease into the ground. Notice the hamstrings engaged in the gluteal muscles. And lift it up, push through your heel and pulsate. Once again, just feeling the back of the thigh and your glutes, particularly your glutes, because those are great supporters of your hips. You can move it around a little bit. Is the right side waiting its turn? Shoulders relaxed. Buns of steel. Let that one come down. You can shift your hips side to side. You could rock your legs like we did in the beginning. And then let the feet come down. Relax the feet for a moment. In somatics, we always take time between the two sides just to feel. I'm going to be quiet. I want you to let your left leg and butt cheek and right leg and butt cheek have a little conversation. What can you learn about yourself from the inside in this quiet, still space? Just a little bit of a loving kindness and in your comparison of the two sides. And then locate yourself in your right leg. Feel the buttocks, the back of the thigh. Reach the big toe back with the right leg and push the top of the thigh into the ground. And see if so we're pushing into the ground to create force, to recruit the muscles and the back of the right thigh and the buttocks. And then exhale, completely release it. Again, reach the big toe back, push the top of the thigh into the ground and the hip crease. So one of the big fallacies I find is that people always say their hamstrings are too tight. They're generally weak and tight, so we need to wake them up along with the glutes. And then let that go. But it's equally important that it does relax, as this one is easy to turn on as the other side. Push it into the ground, and then this time, once you feel you've got those leg muscles engaged, start to lift up, still reaching the big toe. Keep the front of the hip crease in the ground, and little pulsations. So I happen to know this is my sleepy side. It takes a little more direction and attention to get it to wake up and fire correctly. It's also the side I get cramps. So you may find yourself getting muscle cramps because you're waking up some muscles that have been sleeping giants. You can move the leg out to the side, to the midline, just experiencing these muscles a little bit differently by moving the leg, the lines of muscular energy. Left side's relaxed. Let it come down, shake it out. Might feel like a little bit of work. Once again, right side, push the top of the thigh into the ground, reach the toe, lift up, and play with either. You don't even have to bounce it, you could just move it back and forth. Waking up the back right side of the hip. And feel where your big, strong femur bone plugs into the hip. That's going to help to engage the muscles in the back of the thigh as well, because the gluteal muscles and the hamstrings play together nicely. And then take it down. Slowly, let it come completely to a release. Shake it out. And then this final one, if we want to do it with the hamstrings a little shorter, you can bend your knee, push the top of the thigh into the ground. Imagine reaching your heel towards the sky. And you can pulsate. Bring the leg more to the center. The other thing is, if you drop the foot out to the right side, you're bringing the hip into internal rotation. If you drop the foot to the middle, you're bringing the hip into external rotation. So that's going to play with your hip muscles a little differently. Just exploring your relationship with these muscles. All right, that's a bit of a butt burner, so let it come down. Completely relax. Shake them out. We're going to let our buttocks muscles relax, and we're going to come on to our right side. But before you do that, if it feels good to just round your back, stretch your back out a little bit, tuck your tailbone down. Let those gluteal muscles relax. Feel your backside. I like to actually breathe into the backside. Lift the spine. Breathe out, relax. Breathe into the backs of your lungs. Float them up. Stretch that backside out. Breathe out, let go. So as we come onto our right side, it may be that you want to have a pillow or something underneath your head. And we're going to take the legs and stack our knees and bring the thighs up so they're 90 degrees from your spine, and the shins are parallel to your spine or to the long edge of your mat. Just let yourself land on your right side. Find a comfy spot. Feel yourself fully. And we're going to do two of my favorite staples, which are clamshell mermaid tail, which work with external rotation of the hip and internal rotation. So it starts with feeling the big toe side of the feet where they're touching. And on your inhalation, you're going to lift that top left leg. So that's your external rotation. And we're going away from the midline, abduction, and you should feel a little bit of action in your outer hip. Exhale, release it. Release any of that recruitment. Inhale, lift up, and exhale, slowly come down. Do a few just to see how it feels first. Familiarize yourself with the outer left hip. You can even put your hand there, feel it. So a couple ways to do this. You could push the feet together, which helps to recruit the muscles a little bit more if you push before you lift. But you can also change where you're initiating the movement from. So does it feel different to move from your knee or to move from your inner thigh? And what feels best for that left hip? Wake up the muscles in the outer hip. These are your little glutes, to name a few. The glute medius, minimus. You get your tensor fasciculata out there. Lots of stuff going on that's helping you to externally rotate that hip. And then with this one, you can keep doing the lift on the inhale, drop on the exhale, or you can lift it up. And I know which side is my weaker side, so I want to work on that strengthening. Hold it there and just gently pulsate it. Check to see the right side's still relaxed. Just do this one time if you're doing your little pulsations. You're going to feel something. A little bit of action there, maybe even fatigue. Keep breathing and let it come down. Completely relax it. And usually the opposite way is its natural counter pose. So notice where your knees are touching, and now as you breathe in, lift the bottom foot, but do your best to keep the ankles in line so the foot doesn't come forward or back. And notice how your thigh bone internally rotates, and then let it come down. Actually, we're going to do that on the exhalation because we're going to put these together. So exhale, roll the thigh bone in, lift the foot, inhale, release it. You can even feel as you exhale how your left hip is kind of squeezing up towards your shoulder. Inhale, drop it down. Exhale. You can lift from the foot. You can also think of rotating the thigh inward. And now you're going to feel a little more stretch in that outer hip, those muscles we were just using. And can you feel a little engagement in the inner thigh? Across the front of the thigh. Just think of turning the leg bone in your hip. And then once we find this one, same thing, you can lift it up and pulsate it a little bit. Nice little stretch for the gluteal muscles we were using. And then let it come down, relax. Before we leave this side, we're going to do those two together. So you're going to inhale, come into your clamshell, lift the top knee, press the feet together. Exhale, knees come together, lift your foot. Feel the thigh rotate inward. So clam on the inhale, mermaid tail on the exhale. And we're keeping it hips today, so just focusing on the movement of your hip and the muscles that are making this movement. Back and forth. As one side engages, the other stretches, vice versa. Feel that relationship. Last round. And before we switch sides, we're going to roll onto the back. I just want you to let your legs go long, and we'll take that magic moment to notice and shake your legs out and just feel yourself from the left toes through the hip, the right toes to the hip, but particularly in and around the hip. If your inner thighs or outer hips feel different, maybe the way they're landing on the ground feels different. What can you learn about your hips right now? What it feels like to be in your hips. And unfortunately, we normally feel ourselves through our hips when there's pain. But can you feel something other than pain? A sensation of heaviness or lightness, length, smushiness. Use any terms. So let the whole back body relax. We'll be moving on to the opposite side, but before we do, take a big breath in and take a full body yawn. Reach your arms, press through your heels, reach through your legs. You let your back arch. And as you breathe out your mouth, let everything relax. And then we'll be flipping over, coming on to the left side. If you've got a blanket or something underneath your head, a pillow, bring that with you. Let your cheek rest. Find a comfortable space for your left arm and then stack your knees. Bringing the knees up to the height of the front of the hips and your shins parallel to your mat. So you've got an L shape in your legs. Take just a moment to accept the floor, to land in the floor, everything on your left side that's touching the ground, feeling that support. And reminding the left side it's on holiday now. And then locate yourself through your big toe side of your feet. Feel your right leg, particularly the outer hip. And on a breath in, you're going to lift that top right leg. On a breath out, take it down. One of the things we recognize in somatic yoga is that it's not always about the greatest range of mobility is best for us. We want to increase our range of mobility, but muscles are actually strongest not at their end point, but more towards the middle. So play with, if you're lifting your leg really high, play with doing a few where you just slightly lift it up. You might be surprised it actually feels like more work. But most importantly, play. Change it up a little bit. Do you feel stronger if you push the big toe side of the feet together before you lift? Or do you lift from the outer thigh, inner thigh, from the knee? Maybe even from the hip itself. Rotating that right hip out. And then if it feels okay, you can take this last one up. Hold it, pulsate it. Keep breathing, keep smiling. Your beautiful outer hip. And then slowly, slowly let it come all the way down and let it release. Accept the ground. Then feel the inner knees where they're touching. And on an exhalation, you're going to lift the right foot up and try to keep the legs in a straight line. Exhale or inhale, let it come down. Exhale, lift it up. So feel the internal rotation of the thigh. The thigh is like a rolling pin rolling towards the bottom left thigh. You can move from your foot. You can move from your thigh. You can move from your knee. So your nervous system thinks of all those things differently, even if it looks the same. It feels different, maybe. And then you can take the next one, gently push the thighs together, check to see your left leg is offline. You might pulsate the right one. And you'll see things, like for me, I'm a lot tighter on this side. So there's a difference. There's what I would say is an asymmetry, and that I have more mobility on the other side. But this side, I still want it to be strong. So waking up the muscles. And letting it come down and relaxing. Again, check to see you're not tightening your shoulders or your jaw, because those are things that happen. We go into protection mode with the nervous system. So just focusing on the hips and the legs. And now as you inhale, lift the top knee. There's your clamshell. Exhale, let the knees come together. Roll the thigh bone in by lifting the foot. Mermaid tail. Just going back and forth. Let that leg swim in the air. Feel it from your hip. Really nice to just focus on these areas in our body. Though the plan is always to find the parts to feel the whole. Last one. Letting that come down and rest. We'll be rolling back onto our back, and we're going to need either the ball or the block. I'm going to go with my ball. I happen to like my ball, but you can also do this with the block. I also prefer not to have a blanket under my head, but you are welcome to have a blanket. Just watch it. Your head's not way up here. You want to keep your head in a more neutral position. From our backside, we're going to do some windshield wipers just to release and relax all of that lovely work we did. So feel the big toe side of your left foot and the pinky toe side of your right foot. And as you exhale, just let your legs fall one way. Inhale, lift back up. Exhale, let the weight of the legs fall the other way. And notice now you're letting your legs fall and the pelvis is responding, but so is the waist and the torso. And you can even let your head respond by rolling your head in the opposite direction of the knees. So acknowledging what is above the pelvis, because your pelvis is your center of your universe that connects your legs to your torso. If you want to add a little bit more here for the torso, you can reach your arms up. As your legs fall to the right, let your arms just flop to the left. A little more rotation for the center of the spine. Inhale, arms up, knees up. Exhale, arms fall one way, legs fall the other. And think of your hips falling one direction, your shoulders going the other. Opposite directions. And feeling that rotation in the center of the body. But letting gravity do the work as you fall on the exhale. The effort is to lift back up on the inhale. Last one. And then we'll pause. Feel free to hug your knees into your chest and just roll on the back of your hips and your pelvis. Release and relax. And then we're going to take the feet to the ground. And we're going to work a little bit now more on the bottom of the pelvis, which we would say is the pelvic floor. It would align itself with your inner thighs. So either that block could go between the thighs or the ball. And place your feet on the ground. We did an arch and a curl when we were on our front side. We want to find that again. So now if your hands are on your belly, as you breathe in, let your belly lift up. Let your tailbone come into the ground and notice how your back arches. As you breathe out, draw the navel center slightly in, lift your tail, and or press the low back into the ground. So if your pelvis were a bowl, you're inhaling and the pelvic bowl is tilting forward. And as you're breathing out, pelvis is tilting back. And you can feel yourself rolling from your tailbone on the inhale, through the sacrum, even into the low back on the exhale. So finding that first. And then we're going to add a little more volume to this. So now as you're exhaling, think of drawing your navel center in. So we're making it an active contraction in the front of the abdomen, because that is part of your pelvic support. What we say is your transversus abdominis. So you might feel a tightening between the two hip bones and the navel center and the pubic bone. Draw that in on exhale as you press the low back and low ribs down. Inhale, release it. Let the belly float up. Another thing we can do as you exhale, hug the ball, squeeze the ball. It's going to help you to engage those abdominal muscles, but also it's going to help you to voluntarily engage pelvic floor. So think of your pelvic floor muscles like a diamond, and your inhale, the pelvic floor naturally stretches just like the abdomen. It's doing the same thing because the diaphragm presses down. And on the exhalation, your pelvic floor and your abdomen draw in, and it's going to help you to feel that if you squeeze that block or ball. Inhale, release the squeeze and arch. Exhale, curl, squeeze the ball. So this is not to be overlooked in the hips. Really important part of hip stabilization, pelvic floor and transversus abdominis. But you're letting it flow from a space of activity on the exhale to stretching on the inhale. Think of it like your hand closing a fist on the exhale. That's pelvic floor and transversus abdominis. Inhale, let them stretch. I have lots of videos on this area, so if this is new for you, you might want to try some of those. But for today, waking up the bottom of the pelvis. And then if it feels okay as you're doing that squeezing, we can take it a little further. So squeeze the ball and lift up even more. You'll get a little more action there. Inhale, drop down, release the squeeze, arch the back. Exhale, you can start to lift off the ground, and then you're going to get those gluteal muscles and hamstrings a little bit more too, especially if you push your heels into the ground. So lots of stability for the pelvis. I like to draw the heels a little closer to the buttocks. The other thing you can do that may help is to turn your toes in and your heels slightly outward. So we inhale, arch, exhale, push the heels down, squeeze the ball, draw the pelvic floor, navel center in, and lift up. Feel all that support at the top. Then inhale, release it. Let the belly stretch, let pelvic floor stretch, let the thighs open a little. Exhale, squeeze. I'm going to do one more here. Inhale, arch. Feel it through movement. And then this last one, if you want to hold it for a few breaths, whatever your top point is. And if you're holding it gets a little more involved. You're holding the muscles taut in the abdomen and pelvic floor, then we need to bring our breath into the chest. If you're not used to that, you're going to feel the abdominal muscles and the pelvic floor moving, and that's okay too. Working more on squeezing the block, pushing your heels down. Feel all that stability. Take a couple breaths wherever you are to slowly release it. Feel each little part of the release, each exhalation, slowly giving your pelvis back to the earth. And then completely coming down. Let go. You can take that ball out. I'll give mine to Milo. And then a little bit of a counter pose for that. You're going to take the soles of the feet so that the big toes are touching. And we're going to slowly, we want to push the big toe side of the feet together. Slowly let the legs drop open. So the inner thighs are still going to be engaged, but not squeezing towards one another. But push the feet together. Let the thighs drop open a little at a time, as far as you can go. Sometimes there's a little bit of shakiness here. As far as you can, keep pushing the toes together, and eventually you might even get the soles of the feet together. Push the heels and the balls of the feet together. Take a few breaths there so you're still active in those inner thigh muscles, but now they're long, those adductor muscles. Breathe your belly and your pelvic floor. And then we're going to take a few breaths, feet still pressing, to come back together. So squeeze the thighs. The other thing you want to check is that your low back is long and relaxed. So if you're a person that tends to have low back pain, you're going to feel your back trying to do this work. So press the low back down, lift your tailbone just a little bit. Let the muscles in around the pelvis and the inner thighs do the work. Once you come all the way up, windshield wiper your legs. We're going to do that one more time. Just let them fall side to side. Wash it all out. So again, start with just the big toe side of the feet. And you can play with your heels further from your buttocks or close together, because that's all going to give you a different feel for the muscles. So I'm going to draw my heels a little closer this time, creating more of an elongation and stretch in the inner thighs. But push the feet together as you drop open. Keep it active. See if you can feel the inner groins. So if I let go, my legs will drop open more, but I'm not going to. I'm going to keep that action. Pushing, pushing. Feel the movement of the abdomen and pelvic floor with your breath, pushing the feet together. And then begin your slow ascent. Each breath in, maybe just lift like 1 inch, a couple centimeters, if you're on metric. Take your time. Notice where it gets challenging, or is one leg feel a lot stronger than the other? Again, shaking may happen. Slowly coming all the way up. And then once your feet are on the ground, we're going to finish with my somatic version of windshield wipers, which we're going to do one leg at a time. Take your heels a little bit wider than your hips and feel just your left leg first. And now as you breathe in, think of taking your inner left thigh towards the front right corner of the mat, and you're going to feel an arch and a lengthening through your left hip. Right knee stays up towards the sky. And then exhale, come back. And now inhale, drop onto the pinky toe side of the left foot. So feel the inner thigh stretch. Exhale, come back. So you can think of reaching your thigh bone across the middle of the mat. If you want to add your arm to this, you can reach your arm overhead here. Get a nice whole left side body stretch. Exhale, release. Inhale, drop open. I kind of squeeze that side a little bit. Exhale, release. Just the left side. And you can feel yourself going from pinky toe to big toe side of the foot. Just moving that hip. Last one. Always an option to stop anywhere you want to. And we'll do the same with the right leg. So feel your right leg first. Notice the big toe, little toe side. And as you breathe in, come on to that big toe side or reach your right thigh bone across the center of the mat, like your right knee is trying to touch the front left corner of the mat. Exhale, come up. Inhale, drop onto the pinky toe side. Keep that left leg and knee as stable as you can, pointing up towards the sky. Exhale, come back. Option to add the right arm reaching. So connecting your hips to your torso. It's always a nice sign if your face is soft and your head is rolling. So we want the mobility in the hips, but feeling that safe mobility means there's also stability. Where do you feel the stability? The muscle stabilizing the joint. Last one. And then we're going to finish by bringing probably the most common position for the hips, which is flexion. So flexion, when we sit in a chair, would be here, but we're going to go beyond that chair point. And without using your hands, I want you to use your muscles and draw your thighs in towards your body as tight as you can on exhale. And then imagine pushing your heels away. So draw them in. You'll feel your low back and the buttocks stretch out. Take a few breaths there. Keep drawing them in tight. And then inhale, release. Let the feet come down. Take a breath in. Do that 2 more times. Exhale. Hip flexion. Draw the thighs towards you. You can draw the backs of the calves into the thighs. Thighs towards your rib cage. And it'll feel different if you're letting your tailbone lift. You can also keep the tailbone. So for a true, more of a hip flexion, keep the tailbone down and then draw the thighs in. Notice how that feels. Versus if you want that stretch in your low back, you're letting your buttocks lift up. Got another one too. So last one, you might change it up. Squeeze, You can also change how wide or far apart or close together the legs are. Take it down. Last one, hip flexion, going beyond that normal seated position. So legs can be wider apart, closer together, tailbone down, tailbone up. And this last one, if you like the happy baby from the traditional yoga, you can take your feet up towards the sky, hands to the backs of the thighs, ankles, feet. And some people like to incorporate a little bit of rocking. That's always lovely too. Give your spine a little massage. Your spine that's so lovingly supported by your pelvis. Take the legs back down. Any position you like for your hips to release and relax. Legs can be long, bent. Just take a moment for yourself. Hands at belly, and take some soft breaths in and out of the abdomen. Feel the spaciousness of the front of the pelvis as you breathe in to the abdomen. Breathe out and just let the back of the pelvis land on the ground. Let it feel the support of the earth. Breathing in, there's a freedom and a levity in the front of the pelvis and that whole area of soft tissue between the hips. And the bottom of the pelvis stretches, expands. And the breath out, you can just feel the bones of your pelvis releasing into the ground. And the pelvis is home for two of our chakras. The Muladhara chakra is our Mula meaning root, and it's our space where we ground and have our basic needs met. And that's at the base of the spine and the legs. Also the Svadhisthana chakra, right where your hands would be, around the navel center, the low abdomen. Just thinking of this space. Creativity, all your organs of creation. Svadhisthana means one's own place. This place of your passion. Take a few more breaths in and out. And on your next breath in, take a big full body stretch. You're welcome to stay there longer in Shavasana. Enjoy your hips. And coming back up, you can take your refilled inflated tires for a little ride. Go for a walk. Try your hips out. See how they feel. Thanks for joining me. If you want to learn a lot more about somatic yoga, I have both online and in-person courses that's all about somatics. Peace, joy, love, and light.